As host of the Today is the Day Changemakers podcast, I truly love being able to speak with changemakers from around the globe. I get to share the experiences that shape their lives and their ongoing impact. And on this episode, I speak with the amazing Megan Mukuria, founder and CEO of ZanaAfrica, an Ashoka Fellow, an award-winning leader, and a Harvard graduate, listen to this, who studied cognitive neuroscience and then followed an undeniable calling to Kenya. During a service experience in Kenya, Megan realized that she wanted her purpose to be about unlocking the most opportunity for the most girls. Despite encouragement to pursue a more traditional path after Harvard, she listened to that calling and purchased a one-way ticket to Kenya. Today, ZanaAfrica equips adolescent girls in Kenya with the tools they need to safely navigate puberty and unlock their full potential. Megan shares how she evolved from a self-described super wallflower who felt more comfortable behind a book into leading and creating systematic change for girls and women. Megan's story is a powerful reminder that purpose often begins with one decision to move beyond what's familiar. What might become possible for you if you stopped following the path others chose for you and started listening to what your heart has been calling for you? A question I hope you will ponder as you will listen to Megan's story today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am your host, Jody Hope Grinwald, and as I say, every single episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today, I am so excited because I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone from Kenya. So this is going to be such a great story for everybody to hear. So Megan Mukuria, how are you?
I'm great, Jody. Thanks. How are you?
Good. Now, did I say your last name correctly?
It's fine enough. Yes.
No,
Mukuria.
no. Tell it. What is it again?
Mukuria.
Mukuria. See, and this is why we talked about this prior to the episode, and I'm going to keep this in because it's
Totally.
important that people know that if you make a mistake, own it. Because most people call me Griswold instead of Grinwald, and it's very. Yep, they think about Vacation, that movie that came out in the 80s, and I still get called Griswold. So
That's hilarious. Also annoying. Yeah. So thanks. No, absolutely. Yeah.
So yes, I want to make sure I pronounce your name right. So now, Megan, I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the incredible work that you do, and then we're going to get into a conversation. Sound good?
Sounds great.
So Megan is an Ashoka Fellow, and she's an award-winning leader in the field of gender equality and women's health with 24 years experience in nonprofit and for-profit leadership in Kenya and systems change on community and national policy on menstrual health, health system strengthening, and education. She built ZanaAfrica as a hybrid social enterprise from ideation into scaling impact, creating groundbreaking RCT strength outcomes in menstrual management and related health and rights knowledge, social and gender norms, and agency and self-determination for for school going girls. This is the only time I read in the entire podcast. Their nonprofit arm now works not now to embed their proven curriculum into the Kenyan school curriculum for classes 4 to 8, currently working with 250 teachers and 50,000 students to scale to all 13 million students in the coming 3 years. Through the market, ZanaAfrica sells sanitary pads to over 100,000 users with deep impact in girls' outcomes and work-related outcomes for women as well. With their first equity investment, they are poised to launch a baby diapers next year, all products to promote their NIA Health Link, a toll-free hotline and chatbot that provide honest rights-based answers to health and safety and direct people onward to local and digital points of care across the health, safety, and legal systems. Megan is a dual citizen of Kenya and the U.S., past president, and I love this, of a Rotary Club in Kenya, where she launched the first ever national sanitary towels campaign in 2006 and is a founder and past president of the Harvard Club of Kenya. We'll get into that as well. And when she's not working on ZanaAfrica, she supports her husband's startup. Now, if I mess this up, you're going to correct me. Jasiri,
Hmm.
okay, Mugumu School,
Mugumo.
where
Yeah.
they are create I did good. Okay. Where they are creating an Afrocentric, trauma-informed, learner-led curriculum to raise global leaders for the 21st century, including for their 9-year-old daughter. I had to share all of that because it's such a great bio. Thank you, Megan, for all
Thanks.
the work
I
that
know
you're
it's
doing.
heavily packed. You did, yeah.
Well, it's okay. And I typically read very short parts of my guest bios, but it has so much in there. I didn't want to leave anything out. It's chock full of greatness and everything a change maker, is doing in the world like you. So, but you were not born in Kenya. And so
No.
let's go back in time. We're gonna have the Megan evolution. So talk to me a little bit about Megan the child, the young child and where Megan grew up.
Sure. So I grew up outside of New York City in Connecticut, and went to a private all-girls school. And I was always friends with kids from different cultures because I loved the languages, the music, the food, the artwork. It was just, I love that fullness of celebrating different cultures. And so that always kind of drew me. And I think because I went to an all-girls school for 14 years and an all-girls summer camp also for 8 summers, I just kind of knew that anything boys could do, girls could do better. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that not everybody agrees with that. But yeah, that was my childhood, in Connecticut at an all-girls school and Tennessee at an all-girls summer camp.
Wow. So now,
Yeah.
were you an outgoing child? Like for all the work you're doing now, you're using your voice in every which way. Did you use your voice back then too?
I mean, I was a super wallflower and a bit shy. I wasn't in the popular groups. I was the person everybody talked to on Monday about what happened and, you know, gave any moral support or whatever. But I was never the people that were part of the people that were invited to those parties on the Friday and Saturday night. And I felt more comfortable behind a book, I think, or on the sports field, than I did kind of socializing. So I think I was a bit awkward, to be honest. It's only since starting Zana and needing to be the voice for the platform that I think I really came alive in public speaking and in sort of seemingly to be outgoing. So, I could just sit in a bath and read a book all day, but life has led me elsewhere. But I am an introvert, but I don't think a lot of people know that.
It's very interesting because most of the people I interview say the exact same thing. They're the most forward-facing people who have started something from nothing. And yet, when I go back to the question of how were you as a child,
Hmm.
weren't the popular child, and they
Hmm.
definitely did not share their voice. It's interesting how we're led to do
Hmm.
those things. And certain people are. Others like to still stay behind the scenes. My sister's one of them. She's more of the, but she was more the popular child. And
Interesting.
she was invited to the Saturday parties.
Yeah. I
So
wonder
it's
if there's
funny.
something around like not needing to conform, like being okay, being that awkward kid, that allows you to step into that entrepreneurial unknown and to kind of go against forces that are telling you, oh, what are you doing with your life? Or, whatever those narratives are. I think maybe you kind of exercise that muscle as kind of an outside insider, maybe. Yeah.
But during those times, you feel like, I don't know about you, but I felt like such an outsider because I didn't know it was preparing me
Yeah.
for leadership and starting things and entrepreneurship. I just thought there was something wrong with me. And I was
Oh,
this
yeah.
awkward, nerdy child.
Yeah, and I still have books. I'm still a nerd. I'm very comfortable with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think all of adolescence is so awkward, and so few cultures, including our own, normalize it, right? Like the pimples or the sweatiness or that social awkwardness or what do you do with all these big feelings? I think that's a really universal issue. And so I think going through it in my own culture, um, I recognize a lot of that in even the diverse cultures that we work in here, because kind of puberty is that unifying, mortifying experience that we all have to go through.
Great word, mortifying. And I have a 10-year-old stepdaughter. I went through this. My kids are in their 20s. So I'll be going through this again in my 10-year-old
Okay.
stepdaughter.
Welcome
And
back.
then, yeah, welcome back. And then my granddaughter was just born. So yes, welcome back again. I say we lived three childhoods, I swear. But I want to see. So you grew up in Connecticut. You grew up in an all-girl school. You loved different cultures. It sounds like all different cultures were something that kind of fed you. So what did you want to be when you grew up? As you were, feeling all these things and going through all of these wonderful experiences with other cultures.
I used to get annoyed with adults when they'd ask me that question because I'm like, I'm 8. How do I know what I want to be? Like, seriously? Do you know, like, it's an inappropriate question to ask kids because
I
you
hate that question
only
for a kid.
you only want to be what you see, right? People here who see bus drivers and housekeepers, that's their aspiration because that's what they see. People who see doctors or lawyers, they also feel, stuck in that career path, right? And so to me, I always said I didn't know. And it was actually only when I went to like an alumni day at the University of Virginia where my dad went when I was looking at schools, that I talked to the head of admissions there, Park Muth, who's still a friend, and he was asking me what I wanted to like. The next question is not what do you want to be when you grow up, like what do you want to major in, right? It's the same question. We're like, I don't know. I'm 17. I have no idea. Um, and so I told him all the things that I was interested in, and he asked me about if I'd heard about cognitive neuroscience, and I hadn't, and it really ticked all the boxes of all of that kind of cross-sectoral, um, nerdy insights, very social stuff, very science stuff, and kind of everywhere in between. But even with that degree, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was only when I came to Kenya that that kind of like started falling into place.
That's amazing. That one conversation we always talk about on this podcast, that one
Yeah.
decision. If you didn't meet him, you don't, who knows what path, right? You would have gone
Yeah,
down. So
absolutely.
where did you wind up going to school?
I went to Harvard.
Yeah, because I know we talked
Yeah.
about that, the Harvard Club you created in Kenya. We'll get to
Yeah.
that in a minute.
I
So
was
you
going
went
to go
to
to Duke because I was playing lacrosse as well. I was the lacrosse goalkeeper, but there's a boy I was dating who went to Cornell, and he was like, "Oh, we'll break up if you go to Duke." And so, yeah, I went to Harvard for a boy.
oh,
It worked out well.
wait a second. I don't think I've ever heard those words come out of anyone's mouth. We should use that as the promo for this podcast episode. I went to Harvard for a boy.
Uh,
That never
it's
happens.
true. Uh,
I never hear those words. So that's incredible. And you studied in Harvard cognitive
Neuroscience, yeah.
neuroscience. Okay. And so that's incredible. And then from there, what led you to like move to Kenya though? I mean, it's a huge move. You went to Harvard and then you
Mhm.
mentioned Cambridge. I remember when we spoke of, you also mentioned Cambridge, right?
Well, Cambridge, Massachusetts, not Cambridge University.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. I
So,
was, okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So I
you,
stayed in Cambridge for 2 years. I stayed in the Harvard area for 2 years after I graduated. So
gotcha.
basically, like two things happened, Jody. I knew more what I didn't want to do than what I did want to do, right? I knew I didn't want to be a professor, but I loved teaching and learning. I didn't want to be a researcher for the same reasons. Like I could go through the whole list. And at the same time, I'd grown up in the church, but I became a Christian in college, but a very liberal Christian, not kind of what's happening right now in the States. Again, that's probably another podcast. But I was kind of like, what is my purpose? Was my question because of that. Like, what did God put me here on the planet for? And I think whatever faiths, we all sort of ask that question, like, why am I here? And so we had an opportunity to come to Kenya this summer before my senior year on a service project. So we were living with young adults, and then serving in twos and threes in different nonprofits, basically. And so the thought of being able to just kind of get out of everything and out of that comfort zone and out of everything that was like the box that I was in was really exciting. And to do that with a wonderful group of people in a safe place that was really genuinely relational and would help me think about vocational things as well was just a big yes. And my parents weren't totally thrilled, but I managed to raise the support and go there. And so I had the privilege of working with girls who had been full-time on the streets and then were transitioning to full-time school. And a lot of the girls on the streets pretend to be boys until they can't because it's safer. And so that summer, especially, there was one day when there was a girl who was 8 and she'd never been to school. And we just got bottle tops from the neighborhood. We were in an informal settlement. So, concrete floor, earthen room, lots of noise all around. She learned multiplication with those bottle tops in just a morning, and I had this whoa moment where we know that poverty is a lack of opportunity, right? It's not a lack of talent. But there's sometimes when that kind of lands differently. And that was one of those times. And I really could see her going to study in the US at some point. And I could also have seen myself in the same position if my life circumstances had been different. And it was that summer through experiences like that that I really realized I wanted my purpose to be about unlocking the most opportunity for the most girls. And I thought it had to do in Kenya, but I couldn't say that as somebody who looks like me. So I went back to Harvard. I dropped my thesis. I took a class on liberation theology. I took a class on child psychology and the law. I took Swahili so that I could speak to the girls or write them in their own language because I promised I'd keep in touch. And then I did some kind of cross-cultural work that is basically what would be now Black Lives Matter back in 2000, 2001. And because I think really social justice begins at home. You don't just go somewhere far away. And so that was really important. And I was working for an internet startup as well. And then I got invited to come back and be the resource mobilization manager, funding my own way through for that organization. And so the idea that I could mentor kids, that I could kind of help operationalize the organization, and that I could be tasked to start small businesses for self-sustainability, it kind of took out all the boxes that we tend to have in the US, where it's like, here's your volunteer box, here's your faith box, here's your work box, here's your family box. And kind of was like, I could do all of that in one job. And my heart just leapt. And I think those like yes moments are what I kind of call them. I think you were calling them something else earlier. But yeah, being able to kind of have that response and listening to it and then fighting for that. So I had a lot of pushback from my parents. They absolutely did not want me to do that. They were like, go to Wall Street, make a ton of money, and then you can do whatever you want. But I basically said to my dad, look, I'm going to be getting on a train if I go to Wall Street, and that might completely derail me, and I will never be the person who wants to then go to Kenya. And I said, I don't want to be that person. So I have to do this first. And then if I decide to come back, then that's that. And so my dad eventually gave, me his blessing to go. And so in August 2001, I bought a one-way ticket to Kenya. Yeah.
So I have to ask this because I always like to help out my listeners that may be listening into this saying, wow, Megan's got a lot of courage. I don't really have that kind of courage, but I have this dream and I have this thing that I really feel is calling me. It keeps coming up. What advice do you have for that person going through what you went through? What would you share with that person? You didn't even have the support at first of your parents. It was
Mhm.
all you, it sounds like.
I just think it's a question of what can you live with when you're just lying in bed at night? Courage isn't necessarily a lack of fear or a lack of uncertainty. It's just doing what you feel like needs to be done. And there can be small steps, like I thought my future was in Kenya, but I started doing work in the greater Boston area. And that was really critical work for me to then go to Kenya, right? And I had kept in touch with the organization. So there can be a lot of steps that you take to lean into what your heart is kind of telling you. But I think at the end of the day, all we have is ourself, right? And if I can wake up every day and feel good and want to do what I'm doing, if I can go to sleep at night and feel at peace, or at least if my head's running, it's running about things I want it to run, you know, I think that that's what makes life worth living. And, I did have an older volunteer who was from my hometown, and she said, Megan, I wish I could do what you're doing, but I'm living in a gilded prison, right? She's like, I have this house and it's beautiful and I've worked for all this stuff, but I can't give it up. Like it's too nice, right? And so I think it's important to think through what is really important, right? And to find that peace with yourself and maybe to take those steps earlier so you don't, buy the house that you can no longer part with and things like that. It was easier to do, closer out of college than if I were in my 20s or 30s and I had a family and things like that. Um, but we're all uniquely positioned to give something to the world, and that's what makes us special. And if we're not liberating that thing from within us, like it's gonna eat at us. So I think courage is just letting that thing out.
Yeah, so well put. The book, not even to push my book out there, but that is the book. My book, Today's the Day, Live It, that came out in January. It is about the edge of your comfort zone is where you find yourself at the center of the most incredible impact, which is what you did. You were at the edge of your comfort zone, and you
Yeah.
kept going, and then you found yourself in the middle of creating tremendous ripple effect of impact, so
Mhm.
far away from home. So
Yeah.
when you did, take that one-way ticket, how old were you at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
I had just turned 20, 24, 23, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So yeah, my daughter's age. That's
Yeah.
such a huge decision. So you
Yeah.
land in Kenya, what happens?
Well, also, let me just say, there are very few things that are intractable, right? You go, it's a terrible experience, you come home. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
I didn't have that experience, but I think that first step is the hardest one, like buying the plane ticket, right? Because when I came here, it was amazing. I lived in a small detached staff quarters with a friend of a friend for 3 years and, really helped operationalize the organization and create staff structures and policies and procedures. And we started a bakery, we started a bridal boutique that was the first for hire bridal gown business in Kenya. And then I was annoyed with it because it was just kind of promoting Western bridal gowns. So we were the first bridal gowns that had blended fabrics and beads and things like that in them. And that was really fun, right? Like I didn't expect that when I'm coming to Kenya. Um, and the bakery started because I put together the cost per child by gender, which wasn't even my idea. It was an idea of a guy, Paul Akumu, who had done some leadership training with me. And I found out that bread was our number one biggest cost. So after we had moved the kids down to the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro and dug a borehole, it's like, well, yeah, we have water, we have electricity, let's start a bakery. But then sanitary pads were our number two biggest expense every month. And that floored me. And that was kind of another kind of sea change moment where I was like, wow, this is something I hadn't thought about before. And then I was having all these really late night conversations with kids because I was an 8 hour drive away from Nairobi. I'd stay there for 1 or 2 weeks at a time. And so they'd have all these late night conversations with me, right? They'd ask, what's normal? How do you say no to a boy or a girl if you don't want to? What if you don't like boys or girls? How do you say no to unwanted sex? How do you say yes? How do you protect yourself? How do you not get pregnant? How do you not get HIV? How does STDs work? The whole range of things, disclosing past trauma for the first time. And I realized the adults couldn't or wouldn't answer those questions. And it was really derailing kids' lives in major ways, even fatally. And I realized I needed to combine these two things. And so, kind of over that 5 year arc, that's kind of where I landed in year three and kind of couldn't let that go. And I ended up getting kicked out of the organization because they said I didn't understand the mission of the organization. And I was like, well, I actually don't think you guys do because you asked me to start businesses for self-sustainability. This is like true self-sustainability. If we can actually make this happen, and could set us up with an endowment forever. And they were like, yeah, no, thanks, bye. But we did reconcile 2 years later and we have a great relationship. But that wasn't quite the success story, right? Like, so then I'm like 28 or whatever and trying to now call my parents and say, hey, I'm no longer working with Tuole, but I need to figure out how to manufacture pads. And, a little bit of a mic drop moment. And then I
Wow.
was in another even bigger unknown where I had no income and because I wasn't working for the organization anymore, so it was hard to kind of raise my own support for that. And I had this big vision and zero plans for how to figure out how to make it happen, but a commitment to stay here and figure it out. So, life throws a lot of different curveballs at you, but I felt like I had the gift and privilege of an insight into this very unique and also totally not unique at all situation. And that I had this conviction that it was my responsibility to be that voice globally to figure out how to solve that. And that I had the networks that would allow me the ability to try to figure it out. Like if anybody could, Harvard grad, Connecticut, like all these things, girls can do whatever they want to kind of mentality that I was kind of like, yeah, we could figure this out. It might take a minute, but we'll figure it out. And so, yeah, that was my 20s.
So did, going to Harvard for the boy actually help you then utilize your, being an alumni at Harvard to help you move the organization forward in some way? Did that have anything to do with it at all? Were you able to get funders through there? How did you wind up getting your funders to move the organization forward?
I think it's helping more now, to be honest. I felt it was really hard to ask money from friends. For a while, no matter what, whatever school you go to, you're poor when you come because you're saddled with debt and all sorts of stuff, right? Um, so I think it was kind of hard. And also menstrual health was a really hard field to talk about. Nobody was funding it. I utilized my networks in the Harvard name to kind of try to open doors to anybody I could find in all the major foundations, MacArthur and Ford and pick your name. Nobody was funding it. They'd say, "Oh, it's not in public health. Have you talked to education? Oh, it's not in education. Have you talked to global health? Oh, it's not global health. Have you talked to?" And then at the end of the day, nobody was funding it. And I was like, okay, this is all the more reason why we need to do this, right?
Right.
Because sexual and reproductive health and rights isn't just about abortion and queer rights and all of that. It's about the fundamental role of you in your own body and being able to manage your body with dignity. And that's where everything should start. And so, yeah, I used all the tools that I could, but it was actually some family foundations that kind of first started coming in, and it was really, really hard. I went for 6 years without getting a single dollar in. And then I got a small grant from the Gates Foundation, and that's what really kind of sprung it open. And I think where the Harvard bit plays in is kind of not taking no for an answer, like, and kind of saying, hey, we can actually do this thing and getting people to believe that we can do it. Because the Gates Foundation initially said no to the Scale Up grant, and this was in 2012. But they had a one line in the email being like, well, if you want to talk to anybody, feel welcome to book an appointment. So I was like, yes, please. And so I talked to them and I talked to my program officer and I was like, hey, Carl, if you don't fund this, it's never going to happen. Like, we are at the end. There's nobody else out there. And so Carl, who was our program officer, said that like they got a couple people around the table from a bunch of different sectors within Gates that had some extra money at the end of the year. And he said to me, literally, Megan, we just basically winked at each other and said, we're going to do it. And that got us $1 million. And that got us to innovate our fluff pulp. So we have now intellectual property on fluff pulp, which is a $50 billion industry. And we delivered our reproductive health curriculum, or well, ideated on it. And then we went back to the Gates Foundation and they said, okay, well, we don't have any more money for you, going forward. But I was doing some big presentations at their annual general meeting. And Melinda Gates launched what she called Putting Women and Girls at the Center of Development, which was one of the grand challenges that they had announced. So I said, great, we're going to apply for that, because they basically said the reason why they wouldn't fund us is that the data isn't there. And I'm like, well, so let's apply for the data from that challenge. And then we got that. And then that was a $2.6 million 4-year grant to do a big randomized control trial that had the largest data set on attendance in Africa. 140 schools, 3,500 kids tracked over 2 years, developed our whole reproductive health curriculum, which, whoops, sorry, looks like this. It's a curriculum. I'm sorry, it's a little fuzzy, but reimagined as a magazine. So stories instead of, just text and
Pictures,
comics in the
yes.
middle of it.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
and so basically it was just leaning into relationships and leaning into kind of a, well, let's do this and let's do this together kind of attitude. So yeah, now, I mean, I do have a number of Harvard folks. We even have a Kennedy School student who's kind of mid-career and left Deloitte, and she's here for the summer helping us with a theory of change. So I'm all about how many volunteers in the right time with the right skill set I can I can recruit, because we're still, every year you're just not sure how things are going to go. And with grant writing and even our business, with Trump last year, we lost our full capital raise for our Series A investment. We were raising 2.4 million. We lost it all in 1 week. Had my first panic attack within a month after that. Have a really good therapist. Highly recommend therapy to everybody.
I second that.
Really make it normalized in our organization. Like, we've even had group grief counseling and all sorts of stuff. But it's not a clear path, and the future is not linear. It's only when you look back that it's linear. But yeah, when we lost that $2.5 million, it was like, okay, is this going to be it after 15 years? I thought we were taking us over kind of that pioneer gap of having it be really, really hard to fundraise. And then we were suddenly back at the beginning. But again, with relationships, I helped to unlock our equity match. So it's now unmatched. doubled the investment with a couple different instruments. Again, none of this stuff was my expertise. I have no idea about like convertible notes or safes or things like that until I started this, right? We're all just learning. And I think if you go to school with a name like Harvard, you recognize that nobody knows anything, right? We're all figuring it out. So not feeling like there's an imposter syndrome because all of us are just figuring it out and feeling comfortable in that, I think is sort of back to that like sixth grader who's on the wall at the dances, right? Like just being like, okay, well, it's fine. We can do it. And so, yeah, and now we're about to get our equity investment in the next month. So it's taken a year and a half, but we're back on track. We're going to be launching baby diapers. We're going to be launching adult diapers. We're revalidating our fluff pulp costs, and our contract manufacturer here is actually interested in potentially manufacturing by license our fluff pulp. So, I think just keeping a clear vision on that North Star of the future and not worrying about how long it takes to get there.
So I have so many different things I want to say here. It's well, I don't even know where to start. So first of all, I have a program called Connection is the Work, and because connection without it, right? And if you didn't use all of it, and I'm not talking about its work, I'm talking about if you really organically and authentically have a true feeling for what you're doing, you can, the magnetism that that provides to get other people on board. I mean, Melinda Gates. I mean, the Gates Foundation, right? If you didn't make that phone call, if you didn't
Mhm.
see that little line in that email that said to make that phone call, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation today.
No. Yeah. And I might be back in the States. Who knows? Yeah.
So that's why it's incredible to me that it is always that one little thing that you just go. It's like there's a movie called Sliding Doors, and if you went to one,
Yes.
and it has different endings, and it's
I love that.
incredible
Yeah.
how when you really think about it, that's how life is. The decision you're making today will take you down a trajectory that if you made a different decision, you would go the other way. We just don't know it in the moment. Um,
Yeah.
Megan's story is a powerful reminder that purpose often begins with that one decision to move beyond what is familiar. Helping people and organizations recognize those possibilities and taking meaningful action is truly at the heart of my work as a leadership and connection strategist. My book, Today is the Day, Live It, Edge of Comfort to Center of Impact, shares the stories of 31 changemakers and the defining decisions that help them step beyond their comfort zones and create meaningful impact. And you can purchase the book online wherever books are sold. If you yourself are considering a career change or your organization needs leadership development, team development, board development, sales training, nonprofit leadership, and fundraising support, let's connect. With more than 20 years of experience leading and developing teams, running organizations, combined with my experience as a certified professional coach and navigating career change myself over the years, I understand the journey both personally and professionally, and that's why everything I do is through the methodology Connection is the Work. Schedule a complimentary consultation with me, Jody, at todayisthedayliveit.com. That's Jodi at todayisthedayliveit.com. And together we can work toward not only the goals you have today, because once you start looking at what's possible, you will create new goals and achieve them. Follow Today is the Day Live It on Facebook and Instagram. And now let's get back to our Changemaker for this week.
I do want to just clarify something. You mentioned fluff pulp a couple times. People might not know what that is. So
What
can
is
you just
that?
share what that is?
Absolutely. I want to see if I can undo my background because I keep not being able to show things. Let me just see if you don't mind if I can
No,
figure out how
take
to
your
change the
time.
background.
I
Um,
think you have to go.
Video effects. I think I've
That's
got
it.
it.
Yep.
Hold on.
Click the
Virtual
video little
background,
thing,
none.
and then
There we
and then
go. I think it's now no longer. All right. Is it still blurred? I said none. Okay, sorry, Jody. Kept
no, take
checking.
your time.
Um, because I think if I can show you, it'll be better than just telling you. Um, Settings. I went to video and effects and then
Yeah.
virtual
So if you,
backgrounds. Okay, you
yeah.
can see it. Okay, but see, that's none. And yet it still looks blurry.
There's a little toggle where it says
Video.
blur my background. that you should be able
Okay.
to see. If you go to your video at the bottom of your screen, are you on your phone or on a computer?
I'm on the computer. I've got the touch up my mirror, adjust for low light, portrait
Yeah,
lighting, auto.
everybody's computer is so different because if I go to my video on the bottom, there's a little
Hmm.
toggle, like a little up toggle thing, and it says
Oh,
select a
okay.
camera, and then it says blur my background, and you want to just click it to the left.
Oh, see that's yeah, so it's unblurred.
Yeah,
Huh.
there you go.
Okay, anyway. Uh so fluff pulp, I'll show you. This is actually fluff pulp that we made in the US and then brought to Kenya and ran through a sanitary pad machine and then tested with women. It kind of smells like earth a little bit because it's been here since 2015. But basically, fluff pulp is largely North American pine trees, a very specific type of beech pine tree, that is used for like most paper and tissue products that you use. So it has different fiber lengths, and you make it into paper board. They're usually rolls that you sell it by the ton. And it's in every Kleenex, every toilet tissue, every sanitary pad or diaper. It's in every snack pack or anything that you make. Your cup right now is probably pulp with a plastic outer coating. So it's really in almost all consumer goods that we consume, magazines, books. So different types of fluff pulp can produce different types of paper-based products. But the real challenge in global consumerism is that most all of our consumerism is from wood pulp. And so you've got these giant forests, which I'll use in like air quotes, because they're monoculture of these trees that get taken down, run through a mill, and repulped to be able to make all these products. And really, in the world right now, we need to find alternatives to that. So we started with the fluff pulp because it's a third of the cost of sanitary pads. It's even more than that of diapers, and it's all imported. So that also means things like global transport costs rising deeply impact the cost of these essential commodities. Or the global supply, like the global demand versus the supply, means that the prices will go up as well. So we created a blended fiber, and we have 9 different pulp blends that we can patent, and we hope to do more, so that we can make large volumes of fluff pulp locally from agricultural waste and fast-growing things like bamboo or eucalyptus or other types of fibers that are relevant, that we can pull on different levers if, say sugarcane has a bad season, no big deal. We have enough biomass from another product. And so we can really create more kind of conscious products for the mass market, not just that are high-end eco-friendly, but that consumers don't need to care about the environment, but they still have an environmentally responsible product. And not that they don't care, but that they can't pay a premium price. Yeah.
Who knew? Like that's all
Who
we can
knew?
say. Who knew?
Right.
Who knew my cup has it? Who knew that's as weird? I mean, those of us who are laymen to this stuff, this is a good learning experience for all of us to understand how it works.
It is. And it was a really huge learning journey for me. And it was only when I found my co-founder, who's Kenyan German and lives in the US and is a polymer material scientist, that I was able to like find the team to make this happen. Because I study cognitive neuroscience. I can tell you about depression, from a neurobiological or sociological level, but I can't figure out how to make fluff pulp. But I don't need to, as long as I can find the right people to help me and stay in it long enough until I find the right people. That's all it needs. So I'm the kind of person who, when Barack Obama was first elected, the U.S. Embassy has a 5 a.m., 6 a.m. breakfast for election day. And so I went, and back when Wangari Maathai was alive and all these other people, I'm at the embassy like showing sanitary pads to everybody and talking about it everywhere, because you never know who's going to have this aha moment and connect you to the right person. And not in a rude way, but just in a very like genuine, fun way. And it's different and weird, so people tend to pay attention. So that's how I found Luino. And without that, we wouldn't have the fluff pulp. And we think we can save 30 or 40% of the cost of the pulp material, which would be about a 5 to 10% savings on the actual product, which can then help us sustain, hopefully we can grow the company big enough that we can be able to kind of create an endowment for the nonprofit related work that we're doing with the schools that you had mentioned that, we do earlier. So kind of figuring that out. But yeah, life is a fun journey if you let it be. It's, sometimes stressful, but, also just if you go with curiosity, everything's just really cool and interesting. Yeah.
It is. And I'm learning this through a program I'm even part of that's called, when things get a little challenging, saying, well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that
Mhm.
interesting that is happening, right? So it kind of changes your view of it. Isn't that it becomes interesting. Things that are interesting don't have to be negative. They can be very positive. So you can spin it. Um,
Our worldview shapes everything, even how we read into conversations and what we take out of them. It is everything. Yeah, you're so right.
it is truly everything. How do you find the schools, the people, because you said 3,500, I think is what you said, children, right, that you were following. Is that correct?
So yeah, we in Khalifi with the big randomized control trial. So the way we did that, again, and we have teams. I haven't done all the work, but we had a great researcher who we poached from Gen and Tech, Annie, and she wanted to get into this work. And so she started with the fluff pulp and then she wanted to come to Kenya. So I was like, great, come to Kenya. You can help us figure this out. And then we got that grant that she helped us write. And so she helped to do the whole study design. And she's now a professor at Johns Hopkins. Um, and so basically we scoped out different locations, decided on Kilifi County at the coast for a lot of reasons, especially because there was a large USAID program called Dreams that was happening in Western Kenya, and we didn't want that to materially affect our school population. And then we worked with the county governments to long list all the schools, and then with them, they basically pick schools out of the hat to be assigned to which different cohort. So we had a four-armed randomized cluster control trial. So we had schools that just got our pads, which are these. We had schools that only got the reproductive health education. We had schools that got both. And then we had schools that just got the government control, whatever was or was not in place for both pads and health education. And so you had to have both arms of the intervention, like pads alone and pads plus the reproductive health education, with an outcome to say that pads work. And likewise, you had to have the health education only and the health education plus pads to really show that that worked. And so it was pretty easy to find the schools, and that was part of why we chose Kalifi because it had a very large population and large schools. I mean, P.S. The continent of Africa is very, very young, right? And so you have a lot of school going kids. It's a very big opportunity, a very big risk in the future. But yeah, so we just leaned into that and worked with the government, even co-created with them the curriculum, helped with them to find the mentors that we trained, worked with Path International to train them to do the actual intervention so that it was true third party, and Population Council did the data analysis so nobody could say that we were the ones who somehow skewed the results. And so, yeah, that was a very expensive, very big study.
Incredible, truly
Yeah.
incredible. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. Tampons. Do they
Yes.
require now, do you also, for those who are listening, they may be thinking women, some use them. And so would it be cheaper that way? Not cheaper that way? Do you do both, one or the other? Just a curiosity on this.
Great question. So we believe in dignity through choice. We want to have all the products available. Tampons are only used by a very, very small percentage of the population, largely because they are more expensive, not less expensive. You'd think they'd be less expensive because there's less material, but they're more
Yes.
expensive. We're going to try to change that. We're talking with a wonderful UK-based social enterprise that does small-scale tampon manufacturing, so that is something that we want to do. And also introduce a diagnostic tampon so that you can actually just insert a tampon when you go into a clinic and you don't have to have a gynecological pap smear. So you don't need a gynecologist. So we're looking at that, and I think that's going to be a bigger market. But the biggest barrier is not only availability, but social norms. Insertion is a very loaded thing for most cultures, so it's a big no. If people are open to that, we recommend menstrual cups, and we do sell those because it's a silicone cup in a couple of different sizes, and you just insert it. It stays there for they recommend 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours. You take it out, you rinse it out, put it back in. You don't feel anything, you don't have any leaks when you do it right, and it's a great, great solution. And we also do reusable pads as well because that's a bigger part of it. You can see some of the reusable pads in the competition and stuff. So we had a single pack where you had underwear that were tie-on, and they were all cut on the factory floor from Egyptian factories when they were doing big, say like Target or Walmart, orders. So all the offcuts they chalk out and then cut, and then they just assemble them. And then a reusable pad went into the underwear, so you didn't need to have the wings and all of that. And it didn't look like sanitary pads, so people would comfortably hang them on their clothesline because largely most of the population kind of shares clotheslines in closed settings, and so they don't put those out there. So kind of figuring out what works for people has been different. But when we started, we sent some of those kids that I'd worked with who'd gone all the way through secondary school or high school. They were sitting around my dining room table and just asking me what to do. And so that's where I got a USAID contract to work in northern Kenya to do community wildlife conservation to fund some of the ZanaAfrica stuff. And so I sent them out into schools all across the city to have them write down questions on pieces of paper for the kids, like what were the kids asking for questions, then make sure that they answered them. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought because I just jumped a couple a couple steps. Um, but so we were able to kind of identify what people wanted, and we sent those young adults out to markets all across the country to ask what women wanted, and what they wanted was a single-use disposable product, and a pad, not a tampon. And so that's why we started where we started, because we started by listening to women and giving them what they wanted. And then through that trusted partnership, my hypothesis is that they will then trust some of our new products more. So when we introduce, menstrual cups more broadly in the market, they'd be more likely to say, this is Nia. I love Nia pads. Let me try Nia, whatever it is, tampons or menstrual cups. And I think that that's really important to kind of use a brand to build that trust and that relationship to then allow for that dignity through choice. Because most people use multiple products, they don't just use one. And so being able to not see those as competing is important.
Where did the name Nia come from?
It came from a girl in Kibera because we asked, hey, if we're making pads, what do you want the names to be? And so Nia is actually, it's one of the days of Kwanzaa, by the way. So some people might recognize it, but it means purpose or intention in Kiswahili, right? And so that's why we have the hashtag live your purpose, because we all believe that everybody has within themselves the, ability to be what they want to be and to forge a path for themselves, like I have or you have, that maybe people didn't want for them or didn't think was possible for them. And so we want them to feel a sense of purpose and step into that. And we were also the first African woman on a pad package in Africa, which was kind of sad. When I started this, there's a white lady with long blonde hair and a bonnet, like she was going to the races or something, like the horse races. So yeah, everything has been co-created, even how this image looks, how the head wrap looks, the earring, like all of it. And the cowrie shells have some deep meaning. And then all of our comic characters that are in our reproductive health curriculum are also on the package. Again, just to cue people who have gone through a reproductive health curriculum. Hey, you like Nia, you like her older sister Zawadi. We're the same organization. And that's why our Nia curriculum is also called the Nia curriculum. And then we have this hotline in the chat bot there and here. Yeah, so anybody who wants to call or text can just get honest, right-spaced answers any time of day in their local language, wherever they are. And again, all of that's coming from just listening and listening and listening and listening and being curious about how do people want stuff. So again, some people said they wanted to chat. Some people said they wanted to call. And I was like, well, why do we have to choose one, right? And I think the US is very binary. It's this or that. And I was like, well, why not both and? Because that's what we're hearing. And so that's what we did. And it's been wildly successful because then we reach people where they're at.
100%. How do people find you if they want to support, if they want to follow your work?
So we do have a deficit right now this year because of all of the Trump stuff. So if anybody wants to, they can go to ZanaAfrica.org. That's ZANA Africa. So there's a double A in there, .org, and make a donation to a 501c3 and get a tax deduction. And there are a lot of videos on our website. Our executive director in the US has done an amazing job just making sure that there's lots of really fresh, wonderful content that goes into depth about our work. So yeah, and investors can talk to me. I mean, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm MW McCurria. So yeah.
Amazing. And we didn't get to talk about it, but I mentioned in the beginning. So you also were former president, was it president of the
Mhm.
Harvard Club in Kenya? Is that true?
Helped to found it, in fact. Yeah. Well, okay,
Wow.
it was the Harvard Yale Club. I revived it, let me say. So it was the Harvard Yale Club in like the 70s and 80s because you had the airlifts, right? So you had John F. Kennedy come in, brought a lot of the first generation of Africans to US institutions. And so from there, all those people are still alive, they formed the Harvard Yale Club here. And then it kind of got dormant in the 1990s. And so we just kind of reactivated it. And now we also have the Kenya Ivy League Plus network as well. And I'm really proud. I've been an interviewer to the college for over 20 years now. And Kenya is often in the top 10 best represented countries in the world at Harvard, sometimes comparing to Singapore, where the government funds 100% of the students. And all the kids that go to Harvard are on full scholarships because they come from challenging economic backgrounds, but are incredibly talented. So that's something that's been an incredible joy because it's not one or the other again. It's kind of both and like working in high net worth areas within Kenya, raising up kids to go to universities who can really be world changers, and also to work with those who are never going to get a chance really to leave their village, but still have dignity and safety and agency and make their own lives what they want it to be, you know? So it's been really rewarding. And we now have like 500 people in our club.
Wow. That's incredible. Megan,
Yeah.
it's truly incredible. You came from more of a privileged area. Obviously, we've talked about that, right? What has Kenya, going to Kenya, taught you
Mm,
differently that you hold dear compared to not saying better than,
mhm,
saying just different than
mhm.
what you feel or have grown up with in the US?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the majority world is a lot, it's a lot more of a jumble land-wise than in the US, right? The US has done, some would say very good, some would say very bad job of kind of segregating people, right? Both economically and even ethnically, right? And we're seeing that coming up in the gerrymandering and now in the SAVE Act that really needs to not get passed in Congress. And sorry to be a little political, but we need to stand up for human rights and whatever that means in whatever country. So you tend to have, like, when I grew up, there was not a lot of diversity. And that's why I really loved it because it was life, right? And I think you can go for very long periods of time in the US without encountering a lot of socioeconomic or ethnic diversity, wherever you are, you know, and whoever you are. And so it's a lot more enclaved. Whereas here you have very wealthy next to very low income. And so it's a lot more honest in that sense. And I tell people, like, I don't think it's good or bad or right or wrong, but the US functions, well, it's changed, tends to function more like you don't see the system that's in place. And you think that everybody's got their own ability to thrive, right? Here, the systems aren't as reliable, so the relationships are really important. And we recognize that even if those systems are in place, the relationships are still really important. So I think the diversity, um, both ethnically within Kenya. I mean, there are 48 different languages spoken and more than that ethnic groups, right? As well as the international communities and such, whether they're refugees or UN employees. Like, there's just so much vibrancy of that diversity. And I really love that. Like, it just really speaks to my soul. It just really grounds me. And it also helps me recognize that I have a point of view, but it might not be the right point of view or the singular perspective that needs to dominate. And I think that humility that comes from recognizing that, I think, is kind of a freedom. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just love your energy and how you I mean how you put everything together. It's starting organizations, it's a puzzle. It really truly is. And you're trying to
Yeah.
put the pieces of the puzzle together and you figured out how to do that. Do you ever get back to the US at all?
I do. I get back about once a year. I mean, we now have about 20 team members on the nonprofit side and about four on the business side right now. And we have somebody who heads up our USC3, but we keep it really lean so all the money can come back here. And so I'd have less of a need to go back, right? I mean, even we now have our second Kenyan executive director of the nonprofit. So I'm the board chair. I'm not running the day to day. And she's going to the US in the New York kind of area this fall, and probably I'll go in the spring. And so I love that. I used to go a lot more, but it's less now. But also now that I'm a mom, I prefer to not be traveling so much separately from my family. So I think it's kind of the right thing at the right season. But I do travel a lot more internationally now than I did before. So I probably have 2 or 3 international trips, which is funny because when I bought a one-way ticket as a 20-something-year-old and was like living off of $12,000 a year, I never thought that privilege would include business trips traveling around the world, to speak at conferences and things like that. So you kind of never know what to expect when you go into these things. And, the last thing I'd say is that I had so many people tell me, Megan, you can't do PADS and health education and policy. Like you have to pick one. And I'm really glad I didn't listen to them. It took a lot longer for me to get everything done than maybe if I'd only focused on one. But now that we've had the whole package for almost over a decade, whenever I share all of this with people, they're like, wow, this is awesome. And it's kind of like, I was trying to tell you that for so long. So being comfortable with that pushback and being able to be comfortable to say, okay, thank you for the feedback and kind of do whatever you want to do that you feel like you need to do, I think is like the most important thing for people that want to venture into this because everybody will have an opinion, and Americans especially love to tell you that theirs is the right one. Um,
A
yeah.
100%. And it's funny you say this because I listened to a TED talk, and the girl who did it she talked about it being a multi-potentialite. And
Hmm.
multi-potentialite meaning like you're doing many different things. And I have been accused of the same. You have to focus on the one thing and get that right. So whether it's the podcast or my nonprofit or my international forum or the book, you shouldn't be doing all of it because it's like, who are you? What's your brand? And I'm like, oh, I'm all about connection. I'm all about helping people connect so that they can grow and thrive. That's the
Hmm.
bottom common denominator for all the things. And
Hmm.
they were like, same like you. They're like, no, you really need to focus on one thing. But that would not drive me. And when I'm sharing this with the audience, because
Yeah.
if they're people giving you their opinion, it is their opinion.
Yeah. And the question is why? Why should I focus? Like, what makes that better, right? I mean, it took us almost 15 years to get to the randomized control trial, but it showed that you can't just throw pads at kids and expect outcomes. You can't just give people health education and not also have the products that are making them vulnerable to sexual violence, right? You have to have both. And both products together amplified the outcomes in a way that either didn't, right? And so it's kind of like, I told you so, you've got to do them both. But it's a very largely white, largely American perspective of this like singular thing. And I think it goes alongside that like single leader changing the world kind of narrative that got us, Greg Mortensen and got us Somali Mom and got us all of these tragedy situations where people had to pretend that they were more than they were in order to sell their sort of savior story. And I think, like you with relationships, I'm a success because I have all these amazing people around me who are smarter than me, right? This isn't my success, this is our success. And the more you can kind of have that perspective, the less pressure there is. And also, like the more good life is. I mean, I don't know like what to say, but it makes it yeah more compelling. And I think that it can with that group of people and with a different perspective, you don't need to listen to those people. They're like the one thing, and it's like, well, no, that's actually like a very specific narrow worldview that's aligned to your culture, but it's only one perspective, and I can put it in its place. And I
Right.
think that that's important, but it can be hard to do. And it was genuinely hard for me to do for a while. I had a lot of sleepless nights and stress because when you're a young 20-something-year-old and you've got these, Wall Street bankers that are the head of like wealth management at JP Morgan telling you what you should do, it's like really hard to be like, well, no, I don't agree with you.
I, I,
But
I understand.
yeah.
I do. And I didn't have that, but I understand judgment whether it's from
Yes.
family members or
So
outside
much.
world. I don't know how it is in Kenya, but here I do believe, and I hate generalizations because I don't think it's everyone, but there's this thought process that wealth
Mhm.
and schooling makes you a better person. So
Mhm.
anybody who has either one of those things has the right to judge and
Yeah.
say how you in an underclass should be
Mhm.
or how your
Right.
life should go. And that
Exactly.
I think is a real problem. And
And
so
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
a really, oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
finish.
I was just going to say, is it the same in Kenya?
Yes, I think. I mean, because we're a former colony, right, of the British, there's been a lot of inculcation, but I think we have a bad relationship with power in the US and in colonial countries that have kind of gotten out of colonialism but aren't really fully decolonized, right? And power should not be power over, right? It should be power to. Right? If we have positions of privilege, whether it's money, whether it's expertise, whether it's a big fancy title or a big fancy corner office, we have more responsibility. And we've forgotten that with privilege comes responsibility, or with power comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to elevate others, right? And so in Kenya there is like this term wanakubwa, like big man. And that came because the colonial government saw that the system was an elders group of decision makers, and they appointed individual people so that they could control those populations, right? And so, like my husband, who's got long dreadlocks and he's pretty jacked, when he drives our little Vitz car, like a little small car, people are like, "Hey, Rasta, how are you?" And then when he drives our bigger four-wheel drive car, they're like, "Ah, Buona Cuba, how are you?" Like, "How are you, big man?" And it's like deferential. He's the exact same person, right? But because there's that sense of power over, and the more you have or the more you show visually, the more perceived you are to be better. And like the amount of alcoholism or domestic violence or things like that are spread equally across the whole gamut of socioeconomics, right? So money does not make you happier, does not make you safer per se. Maybe it makes you safer to leave if you have control of the money. But I think that's something growing up in Connecticut that I saw because my dad really struggled to make like to keep jobs and make things work. And so I was on scholarship and all these things. So I had a secondhand car when everybody had a brand new car. And I realized that they weren't any happier, right? Their parents orchestrated Enron and other things like that, right? Like they weren't, it wasn't something to aspire to.
Right.
Money gives you a sense of freedom and security, but it's not the only thing and it can be fleeting. My family in the Great Depression had an elevator business because my great grandfather invented the elevator brake. But then he kept everybody in the factory employed during the Great Depression and then sold it for like kind of nothing to Otis Elevator Company because that was his kind of moral fiber. And so that's kind of the ancestry that I draw on when I'm doing what I do, but not everybody chooses those things, right? But you look at Elon Musk, you look at all these people, they're miserable human beings who are making other people miserable. And whether you have a little bit of money or a lot of money, like, what do we exist on this planet to do if not to bring joy and positive transformation to the people that we can, whether that's our family or community or a whole nation or whatever that calling is? Are we being stewards of that? I think there's nothing more important than that. And that comes from listening to your heart to like the beginning of our conversation, right? And there's nothing better than that on the other side once you lean into that yes and you kind of take those steps. It's a rocky path, but life is rocky anyway, right?
100%. And the fulfillment, I was brought up on practicing the religion of kindness. That's what my father always said. If he was asked what religion he was, he always said, I practice the religion of
I like that.
kindness. And so, that wasn't, there was no status related to that. And it didn't go with whether you were Catholic or Jewish or whatever you were. It was, and people couldn't understand that. How did that? That doesn't make sense. Like, why are you not picking one over the other? And who are
You're
you?
not in a box. Get back into the box. You're
Exactly.
making me uncomfortable.
Exactly. And the one other thing I want to bring up, because I think this is important too, is that I know that, even social media and being on people's podcasts and being on has become this popularity contest, going back to that wallflower piece. Like certain people, and I wrote this in my book, is about I tried to wanted to be on someone's podcast because I invited them to mine. But their first question to me, when I just wanted to share about my nonprofit and the work I've been doing, was, well, do you have 10,000 followers on your Instagram? And I'm thinking, no, I don't. And you know what? I only care if one person listens to even this podcast and takes
Beautiful.
away something, we've done our job. But if we've
Yeah.
become now we've become this place where popularity is more, even in the nonprofit space. Well, that nonprofit's doing such great work over here and they're very popular. We
Mhm.
don't have to be popular. We just have to be making a difference. What does it matter
Well,
how many followers?
absolutely. And I think this like late stage capitalism that we're in, where we are defined by our productivity and we almost are defined by our commodity, is a really broken system that leads to a lot of loneliness and depression and anxiety and suicide and, or just trying to chase it and chase it and chase it and still feeling so empty, you know? And I think we need to redefine the economic system that we have, and we need to redefine our relationship to each other because, yeah, this isn't working, what we've got right now. And I think it's clear now. I think almost we've gone to the extreme, and a lot of the stuff that's been there all the time is really now at the front. And being able to say, "Hey, this is the logical conclusion of what we've been doing. We need to create new models, new systems, new structures, new jobs, because this isn't working." Yeah, and I hope that that's something that anybody who's listening can also, the more of us who don't buy into that system, the more we can change the system.
Yes. And my challenge to those listeners who are listening is go listen to someone who may not have 1.5 million followers. Go to an event that may not have 600 people attend. Go support the people who are grassroots. They're just trying to do something to make a difference. People want to follow those, the celebrities that have the most amount of followers, wear what they wear, do what they do. And we have just, we are just making icons of people who are not doing the actual work that really, really makes a difference every day. I'm not saying that in general terms, I'm sure there's plenty of it, but not enough. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
Absolutely. And you know what? Not everybody needs to be the founder, right? The founder, I don't know if you've seen this meme of this hillside. I don't know if it's a concert or whatnot, and there's this one guy who starts dancing maniacally, and then one other person joins him, and then there's this whole cascade of people, right? And in one of the leadership classes that I went through here, the most important person isn't the first person running down the hill. The most important person is actually the second person who decides to join that person. Right? And for those that want to make a difference in the world, you don't actually have to come up with a new idea or a new thing or start something. You can find somebody, even in your local area, like within a relative commuting distance, and join them and be like, that's the vision that I want to help move forward with my administrative skills or my science skills or my, logistic skills or whatever it is. Everybody has a place in this economy of social transformation. And it doesn't have to be the leader, at all.
Now, if you do want to do it outside of your area, I'm sure Megan will take you on as a volunteer in Kenya. So,
Yeah.
oh
We've
my
had a lot
goodness.
of remote volunteers. We've had a lot of like mid-career professionals thinking about changing their lives and have done amazing things. We have one who used to be a very top senior person at Xerox, and she's now very top at Women's World Banking, and we helped her with that transition. But we're only one of many. Whoever's listening, like, find what you're passionate about, and then go find people that are doing that, and just hang out with them.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so grateful to be able to hang out with just incredible people like yourself for,
Yeah,
I could talk to you for hours, hours and
me
hours.
too.
So I appreciate you. I would love to talk, have you on again, and also talking about your husband's school. We didn't get a chance to do that. I want to be able to do that, or have him on with you, or have
Yeah.
I would definitely, these are the types of stories I totally love to share. Megan, before we go, is there anything we didn't cover that you feel that is important for you to share.
Oh, you're kind. I mean, it's really driven by you. I'm just so delighted by the work you're doing and the kind of, ecosystem you're creating and nurturing of people that you're doing. So, to me, I don't think so. I think we've had a really great, fun conversation. I think there's so many tendrils of things we could pick up on. But I think this was a very great, all-encompassing kind of conversation. So I'm happy.
Awesome. One more time, tell everybody how they find you.
You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect professionally. I'm MW Makuria. I think I'm the only Megan Makuria on LinkedIn. My handles on other things, which might not be as active, are also MW Makuria, so Mukuria. And then you can also follow ZanaAfrica. There's ZanaAfrica Foundation and then just ZanaAfrica. We're having a little bit of an identity crisis right now. We're going to be merging those at some point in the next 6 months. But those are some of the handles on other things. And you can always go sign up for our newsletters on our ZanaAfrica.org website. And those go out about, I think, once every 3 or 4 weeks. It's kind of when we have something to share, we share it. So we just had a great menstrual health economy conference that we helped co-lead and sponsor in Kenya. And there's a blog that I just edited going out on that. So that's a good way to kind of interact with us systemically rather than just personally. But yeah,
Thank you, Megan Makuria. I am blessed to know you. I'm so glad that we happenstancely came together, and it's been just wonderful to do our
me
pre-call
too,
this
Jody Greenwald.
and welcome you to the Today's the Day Changemaker family, which I love being able to do.
Thank you so much.
You are
Yeah,
welcome.
thank
I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So, what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goal? Megan, keep doing the incredible work you're doing. The world needs it. Thank you.
And you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.